So, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Senator Bernie Sanders from the great
Thank you very much for the introduction. Thanks to Culinary Workers Union. I think we have some folks from the ATU here. I want to thank Dee and Ron for their gracious hospitality. What I want to do this morning is to talk a little bit about where we are as a nation, where I think we should be going as a nation, talk a little bit about some history that is important for all of us to remember. And the most important point that I want to make when we talk about history is to understand that nothing significant has ever been accomplished without struggle. Without struggle. Nobody ever gives you anything, you got to fight for it. If we were sitting in this room 40 years ago, somebody jumped up and said, you know, I think America is ready to elect an African-American president of the United States, and if he's elected, I think he'll be re-elected. People in this room would have said, you're crazy, because America has a 200-year or 300-year history of racism, and it's not going to change, not that quickly. And yet it happened. It happened because for decades and decades and decades, people whose names we do not know, people who died, people who were beaten, people who went to jail, stood up and said we don't judge human beings based on their color, but who they are as people. While we all know racism still exists, we should be proud that as a nation we have come a very, very long way. 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 80 years ago in this country, people went to work and a boss said, I don't like you. I don't like you because you're Italian, you're Irish, you're Jewish, Hispanic. You're fired. Get out of here. I want you in on a Saturday or a Sunday. Can't do it. I got to take care of my sick kids. You can't do it. You're out of here. I'm cutting your salary by 30%. I can't live on that. Tough luck. Take it or leave it. You don't have any rights. I'm the boss. You're the worker. That's the way it is. And people said enough is enough. Turn of the century. By the millions, they stood up and said, no, we are working people. We may be poor, but we're human. We need dignity, we need rights, we need an income to take care of our children, of our parents. You're going to pay us a decent wage. You're not going to fire us arbitrarily. You're not going to discriminate against us because of our race or our ethnicity. And people formed unions. And those weren't easy efforts. People got fired, they lost their jobs, couldn't take care of their family, they got beaten up. But they formed unions so that working people could have dignity. And what you do in the Culinary Workers Union is a model for all America. You have said that people can make beds, people can wait on other people, but they can and should earn decent wages with decent benefits. You're a model for America, and I congratulate you for all that you've done. Years ago, in this country, there were a handful of women in the United States Senate, the House of Representatives, no women governors. And women said, you know, enough is enough. We are citizens. We want opportunities to do every job that's out there. We want the opportunity to be carpenters. We want the opportunity to be CEOs and executives. Stop discriminating against women. Have we gone as far as we should? No. But no one denies that we have made significant progress. I remember, and I often tell the story, I was mayor of the city of Burlington, Vermont. I was elected in 1981. And it was a huge deal when we appointed the first woman to be a police officer in the city of Burlington. Oh, it was a big deal. Now we have women who are generals in the United States military. All right? We've made progress. We still have a long way to go. Now, I say all of that to try to put it into a context of where we are today. And while in recent years as a nation we have made some real progress in fighting against racial and ethnic discrimination, there is no question that in terms of economics, not only are we not winning the fight, we are losing the fight. And if we're going to fight for our children and our parents, we have got to organize in a way that we have never done before. You're right! Let me tell you a little bit about what's going on in this country today. And that is that the great middle class of our country, which was once the envy of the world, people all over the world looked to America and they said, you know, in America what's important is they don't just have a few people on top, they don't have kings, they don't have queens, they have a country with a great middle class, people can send their kids to good schools, they have opportunity. The bad news is that for the last 40 years, that middle class has been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Now let me tell you what few other elected officials will tell you. Real unemployment in America is not what you read in the papers, 5.5%. If you include those people who have given up looking for work, and if you include those people who are working part-time when they want to work full-time. You know anybody who's working part-time when they want to work full-time? Yeah. All right. There are millions of those folks. If you include those people, what the government tells us is that real unemployment is not 5.5%, it's double that, it is 11%. Serious problem. You know what issue we never talk about? Unemployment among our kids, youth unemployment. Youth unemployment today in America is 17%. African American and minority youth unemployment is a lot higher than that. Today, 45 million Americans are living in poverty. You know those people. These are folks who are struggling to put food on their table for their kids. These are women who are worried about how they're going to have child care for their children when they go out to work. People who are worried about their parents, how they're going to get the prescription drugs they need. Today in this country, we have more people living in poverty than almost any time in the modern history of America. You hear a lot of talk in Washington about family values. When you talk about family, you talk about children. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth. Almost 20% of our kids in poverty. You heard a whole lot about health care. Well, we've made some progress. Still have 35 million Americans who have no health insurance. We are the only nation in the industrialized world that doesn't guarantee health care to all people as a right, and that is not a change. I know that your union has made some real progress in providing good health care for you, and that is fantastic. But what we have got to establish as a nation, that whether you're poor, whether you're rich, whether you're black, white, Hispanic, gay or straight, whatever you may be, health care is a right of all people and not just the class. 30 years ago, the United States of America led the world in terms of the percentage of our people who graduate college. We're a pretty well-educated society. Today we're in 12th place. Why is that? Well, the reason for that is the cost of college has become unaffordable. And many of you know young people, maybe your own kids, who are looking at the cost of college and they're saying, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to come out of school $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in debt. What we need to do in this country is what countries all over the world are doing. And they're saying, if we want a strong economy, we have got to have the best educated workforce in the world. Do you know how much college tuition is in Germany, in Denmark? It is zero. We're going to introduce legislation within the next month to say that tuition in any public college or university in the United States of America will be zero. Millions of bright young kids who want to get the best education that they can, and we're going to give them that opportunity. It's good for the working families in this country. It's good for America. Today, we got 5.5 million young people in this country who either dropped out of high school or graduated high school. And you know what they're doing? Not much. They're hanging out on street corners in my hometown and in your hometown. And many of them are getting into self-destructive activities. They're doing drugs, doing crime. I think we invest in education and job training and less in jails. When we talk about good-paying jobs, we should understand that since 2001, the last 14 years, we have lost 60,000 factories in America and millions of good-paying jobs. And one of the reasons for that is we have disastrous trade policies like NAFTA and CAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China. My view is we need fundamental changes in our trade policies. We cannot continue to allow corporate America to shut down America, throw our people out on the street, move to China and Vietnam, and hire people at starvation wages. Now, when we talk about what's happening to the ordinary people of this country, what's going on is that millions of people are working longer hours for lower wages. Millions of people are literally today wondering how they're going to be able to put food on the table to take care of their kids and their families. But there is another reality that's going on in America today. And that is that while the middle class continues to decline, the wealthiest people are doing phenomenally well. And the largest corporations, including some in your town, are making unbelievable amounts of money. Today, the United States has, by far, the most unequal distribution of wealth and income of any major country on earth. And the gap between the very, very rich, the multi-billionaires, and everybody else is growing wider and wider and wider. Let me bore you for a moment with a few statistics, but it's important for you to notice. Today, the top 1% owns 42% of all financial wealth in America. The bottom 60% owns less than 2%. Today, the top 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. Today, one family The Walton family of Walmart, who, by the way, pays their workers starvation wages. You know about the Walton family in Walmart. They are the wealthiest family in America, and we know how they get wealthy. They pay starvation wages. All right? That family itself owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people. Now, I want you to listen to this. I want you to listen to this. My Republican colleagues, in their last budget, decided to end the Affordable Care Act and to cut Medicaid by $440 billion. Together, that means they would throw 27 million Americans off of health insurance. They decided to cut back significantly on nutrition programs, decided to cut back significantly on federal aid to students who want to get a higher education, Pell Grants. But I want you to listen up to understand what really goes on in America. The Republicans say we got to cut because we have a high deficit. But they refuse to ask the wealthiest people in this country to pay a nickel more in taxes. Now, recently, Forbes magazine published some information. Between 2013 and 2015, a 2-year period, the wealthiest 14 people in this country, 14 people, it's less than the front row right here, saw a $157 billion increase in their wealth. 14 people, 2 years, $157 billion increase in their wealth. That 2-year increase in wealth is more wealth than the bottom 130 million people own. Enough is enough. The wealthiest people have got to start paying their fair share of taxes. Corporate America has got to start paying its fair share of taxes so we can rebuild our infrastructure, create millions of jobs, and allow our kids to get a decent education. What makes sense? What is an agenda out there that rebuilds the American middle class, that makes this country the nation that works for all of us and not just the top 1%? Let me throw out a couple of ideas and you tell me whether it makes sense. Real unemployment is 11%. Youth unemployment higher than that. Our infrastructure, that's our roads, bridges, water system, rail, levees, dams are collapsing. How about investing $1 trillion, rebuilding our infrastructure, putting 13 million people back to work? Instead of having a trade policy like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is going to continue to allow corporations to take jobs abroad, what about trade policies which demand that corporate America invest in this country and not in China? And it's not only lack of jobs that's hurting our people. It is horrendously low wages. The federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. That is a starvation wage. We've got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, and let's raise it to $15 an hour over the next year. Our goal is that anybody who works 40 hours a week should not be living in poverty. That's not too much to ask for. We need pay equity in this country. Women should not be making 78 cents on the dollar compared to men. Pay equity. Right now, because of inadequate and antiquated rules, we have workers today working 50 and 60 hours a week who are quote-unquote supervisors who don't get time and a half. We've got to change overtime rules so that if you work 50 hours a week, you get time and a half for the work you do. At a time when this country is losing $100 billion every single year because corporations and billionaires stash their money in tax havens abroad, we're going to change the tax rules. Warren Buffett, one of the wealthiest people in the world, was honest enough to say that he is a multi-billionaire, pays an effective tax rate higher than his secretary. You got hedge fund managers on Wall Street who pay an effective tax rate lower than truck drivers and nurses. When you have so much wealth and income inequality, the rich and the multinational corporations must start paying their fair share of tax. Right now in Congress, you have a Republican budget which gives tax breaks to the top 0.2%, but makes devastating cuts in every program that impacts the elderly, the children, the sick, and the poor. And our view is that from a human point of view, we do not want kids in this country going hungry. We don't want elderly people living on $12,000 a year. We don't want young people not being able to get jobs. So what we have got to do is change the priorities of America. The priority should not be to see billionaires become even richer. The priority should be that everybody in this country can live with dignity and security. And what we are going to do, Republicans for years, have been trying to cut Social Security, and for years we are pushing them back. But protecting Social Security is not enough. We have got to expand Social Security benefits. Now, let me tell you a little bit of the opposition that we are up against and what's happening in this country. All of you are familiar with the Citizens United Supreme Court decision? You know what that is? What the Supreme Court said by a 5-4 decision, one vote, they said, we think free speech means that billionaires can buy the United States government. Now, they didn't phrase it exactly that way, but that's what they said. The result of that is you have a billionaire class, and you got one or two of them right here in Las Vegas. Did I hear anything? In fact, people think politically that the first caucus in America is in Iowa or maybe New Hampshire where they have a primary. That's wrong. You held the first caucus here. It was called the Sheldon-Adelson Caucus. All the Republicans came here and said, Sheldon, what do you want us to do? And we'll do it, but please give us hundreds of millions of dollars for our campaign. And the Koch brothers had their caucus, I think, in California, same thing. But what is happening now because of the Citizens United decision is that billionaires can spend as much money as they want on the political process. And that is, to my mind, undermining what American democracy is about. What American democracy is about, in Vermont, we hold what we call town meetings. Like this, people come out in the town and say, how much are we going to spend on roads, and how much are we going to spend on education, and how much are we going to spend on municipal service? And they argue with each other, and at the end, people raise their hands. That's one person, one vote. That's my understanding of what democracy is. Not the ability of one family to spend $900 million to buy the United States Congress and the White House. That's not democracy. Now, we all heard about the Koch brothers, and we know that they are second, third wealthiest family in America. They're worth about $85 billion or so. You know, and one might think that if you were worth some $85 billion, you would be content. You might think you felt that you had enough money to live in security, take care of your family. You think 85 billion might do it? Yeah. But not these guys. They're a little worried. And what they want to do is increase their wealth by leading the effort in funding candidates who are prepared to cut every single program that we have fought to develop in the last 80 years. Let me read. In 1980, one of the Koch brothers, David Koch, ran for Vice President of the United States on a party called the Libertarian Party. He lost very badly, but the ideas that they espoused in that election remain the ideas of the Koch brothers. I want you to understand what the family that is spending more money on politics than any other really believes in. This is what was in their platform, and I'm reading you word for word. We favor, quote, we favor the abolition of Medicare and Medicaid programs. In other words, I want you to take a deep breath and understand. They don't favor cutting these programs. Republicans in this budget make massive cuts. They favor getting rid of them. Now you tell me if you're poor in America, you got 2 kids, and your kid gets sick, and you have no health insurance, what do you do? You tell me if you're 80 years of age and you're diagnosed with cancer and you have no Medicare, what do? You die, you suffer, you sell your home, you sell your car to make sure your kids can get health care. They want to eliminate completely Medicare and Medicaid. Quote, we favor the repeal of the fraudulent, virtually bankrupt, and increasingly oppressive Social Security system. Now, before Social Security was established in the 1930s, half of the elderly people in this country lived in poverty. Now, when you're old, you can't work. When you're old, you get sick more often than younger people. Social Security has said that you will get a check every single month, whether the economy is good or the economy is bad. Nobody gets rich on Social Security. And that's why we've got to raise those benefits. But when there's a recession, when there's an economic downturn, every eligible American throughout the history of Social Security has gotten that check. They want to eliminate that. And you tell me, how do people live 75, 80 years of age, 90 years of age? How do you live? That's right. We oppose, this is their view, and again, this is from the third wealthiest family in America, worth $85 billion. We oppose all personal and corporate income taxation, including capital gains tax. In other words, they think billionaires should not have to pay any money. I am the ranking member of the Budget Committee, it's Ted Benjamin. We had a hearing a few weeks ago where the Republican witness representing the Business Council, all CEOs, he said we should eliminate all corporate taxation. All right. Now, while we are fighting to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, this is what they say. Quote, we support repeal of all laws which impede the ability of any person to find employment, such as minimum wage laws. What that means, and this is now what many Republicans believe, is they want to get rid of the minimum wage entirely, the concept of the minimum wage. All over America, states are voting to raise the minimum wage. I believe that over a period of years, it should be $15 an hour. Their view is, let's get rid of the concept of the minimum wage. What does that mean? It means that if you are in a high unemployment area, and I can hire you for $4 an hour, I will hire you at $4 an hour. All over this country, we are worried about the quality of the air, the food, the water that we ingest. Their view is to get rid of the Environmental Protection Act. And here's the last plank that I want to read to you. We oppose, quote, we oppose all government welfare relief projects and aid for poor programs. All these government programs are privacy-invading, paternalistic, demeaning, and inefficient. The proper source of help for such persons
is the voluntary efforts of private groups and individuals. Now, you know what that means in English? That means goodbye food stamps, goodbye programs for children, goodbye Head Start, goodbye unemployment compensation, goodbye worker safety on the job, goodbye any piece of legislation passed in the last 80 years to protect working people, children, the elderly, sick. That is their vision of America, where the richest people become richer and pay no taxes, while tens and tens of millions of people scramble around trying to survive on wages that can be as low as $3 or $4 an hour. Where people, worse than China. Yes. Worse. That is their vision of an oligarchy. If you don't know what oligarchy is a form of society where a handful of very wealthy people control the economics and politics of that country. And that is where they want us to go. You know, when the founders of this country made the revolution in 1776, they said, we do not want an autocracy to control America. And they rebelled against the British. Well, we've got an autocracy now that's controlling America. Our job is to rebel against that autocracy. Let me conclude by simply saying this. We are fighting not just for ourselves, and again, culinary workers, you guys are great. We are fighting for our children and the kind of nation that they are going to live in. We are fighting for our parents to see that they can live out the remaining years of their lives with dignity. That's what this fight is about. And by the way, we're fighting for the planet. Because climate change is real. And unless we transform our energy system, we're not going to leave much of the planet to our kids. And in this struggle, it's a tough struggle. It is a tough struggle because the billionaire class of today, they are very, very religious people. Their religion is greed. I think we have all known friends or family members who struggle with alcohol or drugs, right? And when you're addicted to alcohol and drugs, you need more and more and more. Now, one might think that if people were worth tens of billions of dollars, that might be enough, right? But apparently it's not. They are suffering with an addiction that needs more and more wealth and more power, and they are prepared to step on every working person in this country to get even more money. And what our job is, and let me be honest with you, this ain't an easy job. It is not an easy job, and the unions in this room have the experience and knowledge to know how to do it. What we have got to do is go out to our family and our friends and our neighbors. We have got to educate people so they know what's going on. You know, in America we pay rapt attention to March Madness and the NCAA finals, right? People in Las Vegas, I'm sure, are betting a lot of money on the basketball games, right? Well, maybe people should pay a fraction of that time to the future of this country, what's happening to their kids. I don't know whether Kentucky wins the NCAA, but I do know that unless we are organized and are prepared to fight, our kids will have a worse standard of living than we do. That I do know. So, brothers and sisters, we can win this fight. It's a tough fight. These guys have incredible power over the economy. They have incredible power over politics. They have incredible power over the media and what you see and hear on TV. But we can win this fight if we are serious, if we are dedicated, if we are disciplined. So let us go out together. Let us stand together. Let us take on the billionaire class and create a nation that belongs to all of us and not just the few at the top. Thank you all.
Mike Opperly, 54-year member of the Machines. I beg you, if anybody listen to me, no troops in Ukraine. Please. I've seen a report this morning, we put some in yesterday. Please, no troops in the Ukraine.
Let me say a word, not just about Ukraine. While the middle class is declining, while millions of people are struggling to feed their families, my Republican colleagues in the last budget increased military spending by $38 billion. After horrendous wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, not just Ukraine, where we have lost some 7,000 men and women, brave men and women, 500,000 have come home with a variety of very serious problems. There are many in the Congress now who are talking about sending more ground troops into the Middle East for what I consider to be perpetual warfare. And I happen to believe that 2 wars is enough. Let's invest in America.
Share from Rochester, Vermont, as well as
Rochester is a beautiful, beautiful farming town.
we have exchanged some information. I work with the Hurricane Irene situation that was happening here. But I have a couple of issues that concern me. I came to the charge of the nursing shortage.
What?
In nursing
Yes.
shortage, so I did become an RN. Unfortunately, there are still really huge problems there in terms of shortages of nurses as well as doctors and the quality of care. Like many of you who have come to hospitals, many of you who have come to hospitals, ER, and cath labs, all of that, there's always a shortage, and yet there's no accountability to these people who work, and the CEOs of hospitals who are in the business of sick people, but they're not making sure that they have the adequate staffing to care for the very sick. People are not just coming in with a common cold anymore. And the other thing is making sure that we have our healthcare workers protected and safe as well, i.e. Ebola. There needs to be some safe gaps in place to make sure that we work in a safe environment.
Absolutely. All right, let me just say a few things. Thank you. The healthcare system that we have today is a dysfunctional system. What do I mean by that? I mean that not only are there 35 million Americans who have no health insurance, there are even more who have high deductibles in co-payments. Thousands of Americans die each year because they don't get to the doctor when they should, because they don't have insurance or they have high deductibles. And the point of this whole thing also, and I'm going to generalize it, is that we do not have enough nurses, we do not have enough doctors, especially primary health care doctors. The way to provide excellent quality care, and what other countries around the world do, is you have healthcare facilities all over the communities. When people get sick, they walk in the door so they don't get sicker and end up in the emergency room or the hospital. What we have done, and it's part of the Affordable Care Act, I got into that bill, $12 billion for community health centers all over this country, and billions of dollars for the National Health Service Corps. You know what that is? What that is, it says you want to go to nursing school, and you are prepared to work in an underserved area, we're going to forgive your debt. Okay, you go to nursing school, we're going to forgive that debt. We need tens and tens and tens of thousands of doctors and nurses aides, and we should encourage people to get into those terribly important programs.
What about teachers? Teachers as well.
Hi, Bernie. My name is Marjorie Hanson. I'm the PDA Southern Nevada Chapter Lead. And I am so grateful to be here today. I wish more of my rural community had been able to join me. And I would like to extend an invitation for you to come and visit
Thank you.
One more question. So you got the last.
Good morning, Senator. I represent a different union, actually 2 other unions in this town, and I've been a stagehand since 1947. I went to college in New Hampshire, in your backyard, and shopped at Hatches, and I know you know that. And I see a lot of great faces out in this crowd, but I got here at 10 o'clock. I'm sorry I was almost late, and I expected to not be able to get in. We need to get more and more people involved. We don't have much time. We need to get everybody involved. Our children, our neighbors, and I thank you very much for getting the people here involved.
How do we do that?
Well, I think this looks like a pretty good crowd to me. We can always do better. We got a few extra people here. You raise the right question. And the answer is, we have got to change political consciousness in this country. And here's what I'm going to say. I know you go to your friends and you say, hey, I'm going to a political meeting. I'm going to listen to some senator from Vermont. People say, where the hell is Vermont? Who is the senator? What is this about? Why are you wasting your time? All right? I know that. And what we have got to remind people, if politics is so irrelevant, if it doesn't matter who gets elected president, or who gets elected to Congress, who gets elected governor, why are the Koch brothers spending $900 million on If they think it's important, we should think it's important. And what we have got to do, again, I know everybody loves football, baseball, and basketball, and I do too. But we've got to force our friends to begin to understand the importance of politics. Families that want to send their kids to college, people who are worried about health care, people who are worried about decent paying jobs, people who are worried about climate change. All of these issues are political issues. That's what they are. And the only way we change America is when we do not have elections like we did a few months ago, where 63% of the American people didn't vote, where 80% of low-income workers didn't vote. When we get 80% of the people to vote, we're going to win, and we're going to win very, very well.